Hey, welcome to the table, everyone. What I'm doing today is I'm going to give the Conflict of Heroes Storms of Steel 3rd edition like a dry run. I'm learning the rules. I read the rules, the first part of the rules that you're needed to play the first couple of scenarios. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to put stuff on the board and start pushing things around. So because it's a first play, I remember a lot of the basic concepts from when I played first edition, and then there's a couple of additional things that is what I'm going to have to just start getting kind of some of the nuances down for. But I think we'll be fine. So let's read the scenario here for you. What do we got going on? So this is, we're doing the Courier Satchel. That's their beginning scenario. 4th of July, 1943. I have not spent all of the time and energy necessary to secretly deploy our company just to have our plans become common knowledge to the enemy. That's Captain Schubert, 1st Brigade, 3rd SS Motorized Division. So this is the general situation. Shortly before Operation Citadel, a Soviet probe intercepts a courier carrying a satchel with German deployment orders. An elite platoon of Panzer Grenadiers is immediately dispatched to retrieve the satchel. The provincial Soviet commander orders the documents delivered to an intelligence officer at headquarters for translation. With the local front a beehive of activity on both sides, getting the satchel to headquarters is easier said than done, Panzer Grenadiers notwithstanding. Okay, so the German orders are to retrieve the document and satchel before Soviet intelligence can translate and pass on your deployment orders. Soviet orders: deliver the German document satchel to the regional headquarters stone building, which is here. Boop, boop. So we're going to try and catch them. Well, I say we, but the Germans are going to try and catch them, and then the Soviets are going to try and get them there before they're caught. And then the victory points. German forces get victory points for every Soviet unit destroyed. If a German unit exits the map with the satchel control counter, they get 2 victory points. We get 1 for each unit destroyed, 2 if we leave with the satchel, and we get 1 at the mission end if the satchel control marker is under German control. So if we don't leave the map, they're still going to get 1 as long as it's in our control. Then the Soviet forces, they get something that says 1 victory point per German unit destroyed, and 1 end of each round if the Soviets control the satchel control marker in either hex 7 or 8. So it's possible they can get the satchel to the stone building, and the longer it sits in the stone building, they're going to get, victory points for it. Okay. And it looks like for rounds 2 through 5, according to the picture, they're going to get, they start with the satchel there. So it looks like the German forces are going to have to bust into this building and take it. So the satchel and documents are represented by control. Germans immediately gain control when they move into the satchel's hex, and it may be moved by any unit. So there's not necessarily one unit that has the satchel. The satchel is just going to show up, and as soon as a German unit moves onto the satchel, they gain control. Is what it sounds like. So cool. All right, we got it. Now, there are a couple rules that it has down here for new players. One, it says, we suggest you remove the destroyed hit marker. So there is a chance when you draw, you get the dreaded unit destroyed. Well, I'm sticking that right in the bag, baby. Boop. That's in. Good luck, teams. And for the draw bag of today, this is the choking hazard suffocation bag that came with the game. So I'm going to use that. That seemed appropriate for troops. And it also had optional adrenaline card for all missions, where everybody can start with an adrenaline card. And I'm not doing that either. I'm just going to use the basic draw deck that they recommend of cards 1 through 13. So this is all the copies of cards 1 through 13. Everything else is back in the little box. We have the Soviet forces on the board. I've got my spent die. I've got the little stress tokens there. And my German the bad guys are over here ready to come onto the board. And I think that's it. Yeah, we're good. So, with that in mind, the basic Soviet force deployment is I've got the 2 Maxim machine gun units here on the outside, so we've got nice protection here on the flanks. Then I've got a couple of the Soviet infantry units here, squads. They're deployed on the outside again, covering and providing a nice bit of coverage here, protection. And then 1 Soviet rifle squad in the building where the satchel will appear. Cool. Then, that's pretty much all you need to know. I think that's like the beginning of it there. We do get 6 cap points. I've got the cap tracker over here. I've got the scenario book kind of covering it. So we're going to use the cap. So my first observation is because there are only 5 rounds, you've got to be pretty aggressive, it seems like, with the Germans to get them up there, which means using your caps to affect dice rolls. But same thing for the Soviets. Those cap points, I think when I used to play, I was very stingy with the cap points, but they replenish every new turn, every new round. So you might as well use them out and try to affect combat, because if you're going to be aggressive to push into the building and get the satchel and leave, you're going to have to use some cap points, I think, to clear a path and whatnot. But we'll see how it plays. All right. Now I was looking here for the initiative. German player has initiative. So pre-mission Soviets place their units. See, they got. What's really nice is the scenario. I know you want to see me play. You don't want to hear me talk about the game. But I really like the included pictures of the map and the setup. Very clear for me to see what unit goes where. Now over here it says what units are in play, and it says what hexes you put them on. I guess you could put those units however you want, but the graphics just make it very clear to see, I can match this exactly because I see which number of infantry is there, so I can make this look just like this, no problem. And then down here I really like this reminder round track. So it says here, pre-mission, the Soviets place first, Germans have initiative round 1, and then it's got little reminders about, like, you got your courier coming on, the reinforcements for Germans. So everything is just laid out really, really well. And what's nice is it says here for some of these early mission, well, it says early mission. I guess this first mission, it's got reminders of your AP cost penalties for moving into the terrain, little reminders, and then defense bonus. All of this information is on the player aid charts, which I've got over here. So I'm just rearranging so I can find everything when I need it. And one comment. So Uwe commented on the video, and that was nice. Thank you for watching the video where I did the unboxing. And yes, this only comes with 1 copy each of the player aids. But he rightfully pointed out too that all of these are available for download from the Academy Games website. That way then you can have them on your tablet, computer, PC, phone, or you can print them out. So, there's more available. It's not like you got to go photocopy, or you can if you want, but they are available for free. So it's not like you got to buy an extra game to get more. All right, so let's go. Germans have the initiative. Now, from reading my memory, when you come onto the board, the German deployment zone is over on this side. And when you come on, it costs 0 AP. You don't have to make a spit check. That's like a free move onto the board. But it says they do get the stress. So, stressed. Now, as far as the Soviet player goes, I don't see a need to move yet. Like, they're in their little defensive positions. They're going to pass. Now, they could be aggressive and leave, but I don't want them necessarily to leave their defensive positions. They're in buildings. They've got protection. So they're gonna pass. Now, the German player is going to bring on. Now, I could come all the way down to the road, but that just leaves a nice open path of firing. I don't want them to be shot at on the road. So we're going to deploy and come through the woods. Now, you don't use the half hexes. So he's going to deploy onto the map into the first full hex. Now, I did ask this question, and I asked this question in an email like just a few minutes ago. So I'm playing before I got a response. So it's not a knock on them. I mean, you know, it takes more than 5 minutes for someone to read, you know, an email. I'm cool with that. So the question that I sent was, with these stress markers, I'm assuming they come off if you don't do an immediate action. Like the idea was there's an action point penalty if you do, you know, an action with this guy multiple turns in a row. But if he doesn't do something on the immediate turn, he can lose that stress. Because it says like if you pass, then you don't generate stress, and then units aren't stressed, because I think there's a moment where they're catching their breath. So I hope that made sense. All right, this is early. I woke up and I just jumped right into playing. So I'm going to take the stress off of him. I'm going to move the stress over here because that unit just acted, right? So if I was going to have him do something immediately right away, there'd be that AP stress point penalty. But it goes back to the Soviet player, who again is going to stay put, have no need to move. Then I can come back to the German player and say, okay, we're going to move up. So they move up, whoop, into an open spot, and they are rested, so no stress there, but now they become stressed. Now they get to make their first check. So this is the new mechanic that they don't become stressed yet, right? They do the action, we make the spent check, then we put the stress on them. So this is the new mechanic I was really hoping to play with, so I'm excited to try it out. It costs 1 movement point to come onto the board. So I gotta roll this 10-sided die, and the number 1 is on here twice. So I think they said there's like a 20% chance of this unit becoming spent. So roll well. Roll to 4. So they are not spent. They can still do stuff, but they are now stressed. So if I had them move immediately again, then they would have a +1 to that AP cost. So they would be more likely to become spent. But anyway, it goes back to the Soviet player, and the Soviet player is going to pass. Like, we probably don't have to do anything until the Germans get up here, you know, when we start shooting at them. So it goes back to the German player, and they're going to move up. Boop. And now they would need to do the same thing. They're going to make that spent check. Ha ha ha. A 1. Yay, lucky me. So they become spent. Now, because they took an action and they rested, right? I'm like, they caught their breath because they didn't do 2 actions in a row, but they did an action and they're spent. That's actually important to keep track of that spent, or that stress for a spent unit, because you can spend cap points to have this unit move, shoot, fire, and if they did that 2 actions in a row, they would have that spent penalty applied. Why would you spend cap on a used unit? So for example, if I really wanted to continue to push and move them forward, I could spend my cap points, the German cap point tracker, and cover the cost of that AP to activate and move them, right? The only problem is when you have all your units spent, if both players pass in a row, then that's the end of the turn. So you've got to be, you know, make sure that you're using all your spent units and all your cap points before the end of the round. So right now, that unit is spent and they're stressed. Alright, so I'm going to have to use cap points to do. See, that's the thing is, if they're not spent, then it doesn't cost any cap points to do anything with them. So they're just free to do their actions until they're spent. Okay, so that was the German player, spent, stressed. Soviet player passes for now. Then the German player is going to move up into the woods. And my little AP says, woods cost an additional AP point. So that's 2. Because it's stressful to move up. And now that means we're going to roll. And I got to roll a 3 or higher. If you can see that, We rolled a 5. Yes. So they rested. Now you might say, man, that's a real pain moving the marker back and forth, and if you got several units doing stuff. But actually, since you really, unless you have like, oh, you know, I forgot to deal cards. Man, I told you about the deck of cards and that I wasn't using the adrenaline card, and I forgot to draw the initial 2 cards for the Soviet player and the German player. When I solo play, I tell you what, I struggle with card management. If you've seen me play a game, I always forget that. But I was about to say, I don't see a problem with moving this little stress marker around, because unless you use like a card or group movement, you generally are not going to have multiple units stress. So you just move that one little stress marker around among your troops. I don't think that's a lot to track. Which reminds me, let's draw these 2 cards now, and I'm going to do my best to try and remember that I've got cards that I can use. Alright, so let's draw for the German player first because they had initiative. And this game, they all start with 2, and then they draw 1 card per round. So the first card for the German player is Swift Action. Take an extra turn. Take 2 consecutive turns, skipping the opponent's turn. Turn actions may be taken by different units. Sweet. So that's cool. So I could, like, say, do something with this guy, and then do something with that person to avoid the stress penalty. And it says here, though, that the unit that does that, this blue symbol means, if I remember right, though, that's an AP cost. Like, they have to pay that AP, or they could spend an AP point, or a cap point, cap. Like I said, I'm waking up. So it will take a cap point to move that unit, but it allows you to take 2 turns in a row. 2 actions in a row. 2 turns. Then we also get Seek Cover. Now see, this is a bonus. That plus means it's a bonus, so I can play that as many of these cards as I want, and they augment things. Then this one here is an action. So Seek Cover, Hasty Defense, no cap cost to pay. Place a hasty defense marker or over a unit not in close combat. So what that means is this would be my action. So, you know, Soviet player does something, German player comes back and says, I'm going to seek cover. That would be their action, and which means nobody gets stressed or anything like that, I believe. So we'll put that there. Boop. Although I do need to remind, because it might be the unit you play it on. Like I said, the cards are a little new. The cards they've had before, but the cards layout is a little bit new for me. And so I'm trying to, those are battle icons. I was trying to find the battle icon. There they are. Groups. Maybe played as part of a group action. Okay, that's what the purple one is. And then the question mark is a hidden. Hidden units may play this card. Well, okay. Well, that's probably pretty good then. Alright. Like I said, I'm learning. You're learning with me. Okay, now the Soviet player, they're going to get their 2 cards right now. They get the Adrenaline, 1 free action. So a spit unit may take 1 free action of any cost. Cool. We're going to set that one there. Then the Soviet player also gets command action. 1 free action. A fresh or spent unit may take 1 free action of any cost. Nice. And again, no cap point to play. It is an action in their action. Good. And then I'm going to put my draw deck over here. Alright, so I remembered I got cards. And I think I was back to the Soviet player side. You know, when I play solo, I'm going to need a little flip coin or something to remind me where I'm at for when I take those little breaks. But I think I'm on the Soviet player side. Alright, cool. Yeah, and I can do that. I'll just flip this cap marker. That way if I have to pause and go get a drink or something, I'll be like, oh, it's on the Soviet player. It's on the Soviet player right now. And again, they're going to pass. No need to move. So that puts the burden of movement and command on the German player. Now see, this is where the stress comes in, because that unit is spent. I can spend a cap point to make the movement cost normally 1. but to move into this force is going to cost 2 caps, so it would cost 2 action points. So I could spend 2 caps, make that a 0 cost endeavor, and move them up. They don't have to make the spent check, but they do get stressed. So I'm going to spend 2 caps and move that Panzer Grenadier unit forward, and they are now stressed from that, but that's how you can move spent units. Now, again, I had the swift action. I could do 2 consecutive turns or seek cover. So I don't need to seek cover yet because we're on the move. We're being aggressive. Then it goes back to the Soviet player. Now, the center dot here is not covered by a tree, so that is actually an open ground unit. Oh, where did I put? I was just playing with this and I stuck it in my pocket. I did. I have the handy dandy Academy Games. This came with the game, their line of sight tool, which is cool because I'm going to use that. I don't need to. They're like right there. So the line of sight goes straight across, but the little center dot is on the road in this open, so it's not touching the wood. So this is not a woods hex. The German unit is in a woods hex, so they're going to get some protection, some cover, if you will. But this Soviet unit, the Maxim machine gun, is going to shoot there at the Germans because it's like, oh, look, there's Germans. Let's shoot them. And we're going to count the distance. If they were adjacent, they'd get a nice fat +4 bonus to shooting. I believe it's either +3 or +4. It's one of those things where I don't have memorized yet all the bonuses, but they're not adjacent. And it's within range of their 9. And you can shoot out to twice that. So their range is normally 9, but they could shoot out all the way up to 18, but then there's like a -2 penalty with their shooting. So we're fine. They're just a couple hexes away. So they have a 3 firepower. The white box means they get a -2 penalty if you do close assault with them, but we're not close assaulting, just if you're curious why there's a white box on their firepower value. And with the camera so far away from the action, you might not see what I'm talking about. So let's do this. Let's bring this in a little bit because there's parts of the map I'm not using yet. So let's zoom you in. Boom! Now you can focus in on the action with me. The camera's probably wiggling. It'll stop wiggling in a minute. Alright, so there's my firepower value in that little white box I'm talking about. So firepower 3. The German unit, because this is in their front, because these units have facing, and the little green mark here says where they're facing. So this is in the front arc of the Soviet player, because it's the front hex and the 2 adjacent ones. So they're shooting out the front. Now, to be fair, earlier what I could have done was turned for them to face the onslaught better, which I probably should have done, because as I'm looking at the board and thinking about the facing, you know, I could have done that earlier, but that's still considered the front. So this is still in their front. And because this is the front of the German unit, they'll be using their higher defensive value, which is down here in this corner. So they have firepower 3. They have a woods give a +2 defensive bonus. So they're actually at a 14. 3, so I'm trying to think math. 14 minus 3 is 11. So the Soviet player is going to have to roll an 11 if they want to shoot that German unit. Now I can spend cap points, and because this is a defense roll here, I can spend up to 2. If I remember, I can spend up to 2. And so they're going to spend 2 cap points because that's a pretty bad number they need to roll. So they're actually going to bring that 11 that they need down to a 9. That's still not a very good number, but we're going to see what we can do. So the Germans are sneaking up. They're in the woods, and this guy over here says, oh, I see somebody, and they're going to open up. 7. Very close, but not enough. Alright, now the Maxim unit, it's 3 action points to fire, so they're going to roll their little dice here. And they rolled a 1. I am rolling horribly. So that means they become spent, boop, and they are stressed. So they get their own. Now they get their own because the action, you know, the time between actions for back-to-back actions, that's per side kind of a thing. So this Soviet player did something, became spent and stressed. So what that means is when it comes back to the Soviet player turn, if I wanted that specific unit to fire again, I would have to pay the 3 AP built in for normally firing. I'd have to pay 3 caps and 1 cap because they're stressed. So that would use all the cap that I have for the Soviet player to make that unit fire again. Ooh, that's a big cost to pay. Now, I come back to the German player, and it'd be the same thing here. If I wanted this unit to shoot back, that's going to cost 4 of my cap points, and I've only got 4 left. So before I start using cap points on that, we're going to move up. Oof. Now see, I could use cap points to start moving forward to try and push in to do some kind of assault. But that'd use a lot of my cap points on spent units. So we're going to move this unit up. And we're going to roll to see if he becomes spent, because that's 1, well, 2, because it's 1 action point penalty for moving through woods, right? I rolled a 4. So they're not spent, and because that guy had a moment to catch his breath, but they are now stressed. So they can still do stuff, doesn't cost cap points to move them. Then it goes back to the Soviet player. So the Soviet player has a choice to make. You know, we could shoot again with the spent unit or use this fresh unit to shoot. We're going to do that. We're going to shoot with the fresh unit. And what I could do, because once this German unit moves forward 1 more, it would be out of this unit's fire arc, because his front arcs are here. So one thing I might have to do with this unit at some point is turn them. So what I'm going to do in preparation for everything is I'm going to go ahead and rotate this unit by 1 and 2, because you can rotate them, and that's their action, and you get to check for spent and all that stuff, but you can rotate them as much as you want. I believe. I know if you move forward you can rotate as much as you want, but I believe rotating a unit, they can rotate as much as they want, but they have to check for spent and all that stuff because that's their turn. Let me just double check that real quick since I've got you with me. Position, unit facing. Yep, we got that. Unit stacking, control markers, pivoting. A unit may use a move action to pivot in place, rotating as far as he wants without moving. So it does cost 1 AP, but because of the action, they would have to make that spent check. Alright, so now why did I rotate 2? Again, just so as these guys start moving forward, this puts quite a bit of line of sight on their front arc. Now, could I have done that earlier, rotated them when they were doing all those passes? Yeah, but you know, ultimately I didn't quite know exactly where the Germans were going to come out of the woods, so that's what they're doing. So here we go. First, let's see if they're spent for that. That was 1 AP. They're not stressed. They're fine. And because that was an action that wasn't consecutive, I'm going to move that stress marker over here. And one reason why I also think that the stress comes off if they have an action of inactivity is they only give you 5 total of these stress markers. If stress was something that didn't go away and was very fluid, they'd have to give you like 20 stress markers. So I think the stress comes off. But anyway, they're stressed because they just did an action. Then it goes back to the German player. Now he's stressed. So but now it's a little scary because as we move up without cover, we're in the open, it's going to be much easier to shoot at us. But this guy can come up. This guy is spent. It would cost a lot of cap points for them to shoot. But we got to move in. I'm thinking we're going to do it. We're going to risk it. Go big or go home. So this German unit steps out. And they're done. And so that's just trying to think of the AP cost. So they weren't stressed, but it's 1 cap point because that makes that a 0 point cost maneuver to do. So I move them forward 1, the cap, and they're already spent, so they just get their stress back. And that was an action without them doing something, so the stress comes off. Like, that's in my brain how that works. Then we go back to the Soviet side. Now see, the Soviets now have options. They can shoot from this unit because they're not spent, but they are stressed. But they might want to risk it because this unit is right out in the open, and it would cost all of the cap points to just activate. Whereas this guy can spend a couple cap points to give him a good bonus on shooting them. And I think that's what they're going to do, is shoot, even with the stress. So they have an easier chance of becoming spent. But because they're in the open, they get no defensive bonus. The Germans get no defensive bonus. And it's coming in on their flank because their front is here. So this is a flank shot. So they're going to have to use their 11 defense. They have a firepower bonus. Oh, 4. I wasn't even aware of that. So already they're at a 7. They need to roll a 7 to take that unit out. And the Soviets, instead of spending a whole bunch of cap points to activate the Maxim machine gun, they're going to spend 2 cap points to fire to give themselves a bonus. So they're going to hit on a 5+. And so far, I think I'm doing that right. So I spent 2 caps up to 2 to give me +2 bonus. 11 minus 4 is 7. The 2 is a 5. Boom! They rolled a 7. That's a hit. So first thing I'm going to do is reach into the magical bag of infantry damage. Ooh, ooh, what happens? And I grab whoopsh, pinned. Now in a face-to-face game, you wouldn't show your opponent this. You're going to look at it and go, man, they're pinned. They can't move. That's bad. They need a rally of 7 to become unpinned. Okay, so we're going to put that there. I'm going to leave it face up for me because it's solo, and I can just kind of look there. But that's the secret stuff. And if you've not seen that before, if you've never played this before, I like that because this gives some granularity to the potential damage of your units without having to use a chart. You just pull the chit, and then all you need to know is on here. So the rally number is 7. It says they're pinned for flavor, and then that little circle slash over the number that matches up with their movement. So that's a way of saying they can't move. They can fire and do everything else, they just can't move. And if it was a number instead of a circle slash, that'd be like a penalty to that action. Alright, so the Soviet player was stressed, so they're going to add 1 to their activation point. So actually it's 5. I gotta roll a 5 or higher to not become spent. Not a 5 or higher, I'm sorry, a 6 or higher. Because if you roll and your number equals the total AP cost to do something, they're spent. So I have to roll higher than 5. Nope, I rolled a 5. Now that was risky. They did the back-to-back shooting, but it was worth it because they damaged that unit. If that unit gets hit one more time, they're destroyed. So the Soviet player says, that was worth it. And they retain their stress because they were stressed when they did it, and they're stressed again because they did a back-to-back action. Then it goes back to the German player. Alright, I'm starting to get a feel for things. The game will speed up now. Now, we're going to be risky. We're going to push up because the Soviet player doesn't have enough cap points to activate people for shooting and things again. The German player was out capping the opponent. So he's going to move up with his fresh unit, because he's going to move in and assault that machine gun unit when he can. So he pushes up, rolling the wrong die. It's 1 AP to move, and he's moving into the open, so no additional AP cost. He rolls a 3, but he is stressed. Then it goes back to the Soviet player's side. Now, we're going to have to do something with these fresh units. We can. Because we have folks coming, this guy is going to rotate. That might not seem like much, but again, that shifts his front to all of this area where the Germans are coming. So he's going to check to see if that made him spent. He rolled a 2. He's not spent, but he's going to move that stress marker over here because they've catched their breath, but now they're doing stuff and they're disorganized, so they're under stress as they position themselves. All right. Now, back to the German player. I do have enough cap points that I could move this unit in here, and they could do a close assault. And yeah, we're going to do that. It's going to cost a cap point to make that a 0 cost maneuver. So they move in. Oh, wait, they can't. Oh, thank you for reminding me of that, because they're pinned. So they're going to... Oh, and you know what? Gee whiz. They can't rally either. Rally is a 5 action point cost maneuver to do, which means since they're spent, I would have to spend 5 action points to force and afford a rally roll. I only have 3 action points left. So I can't rally that unit. I was thinking, oh, I'll just spend their action to rally. They can't do that. So I have to continue doing maneuvers with this unit. Fine. We'll move them in. So they're going to move in. They can move forward, going, in their forward. Backwards costs extra AP, but this is in their forward movement. So they're going to move forward, and they're going to retain that facing. So because they were stressed, that adds an extra AP. Plus, to move into the building is 1 AP, because that's a wood building. So that's 3 action points. I have to roll a 4 or higher to keep them from being spent. Rolled a 2. So they are now spent, and they retain their stress because they're doing back-to-back actions. But they're in the building. Then it goes back to the Soviet player side. Now, what can the Soviet player do that there are now Germans in there? Well, here's the thing that they can do. Because the way close assault works, unlike some other games, is it doesn't immediately happen because you move into the hex. It happens when you initiate an attack. Alright, so if I move the German unit in, that means they're all in that area and they're vying for position to launch their attack from. So we know that potentially they can do close assault. Now, because you have to use an attack, the German or the Soviet player has an option now to retreat, or he could initiate an assault. But because they got that white box, they can't initiate an assault, and they get a penalty when they're in an assault combat. Now, let me see here. Is it 0 AP to launch the assault? Again, these are questions I'm asking because we're learning how to play the game. I'm just checking here. Last combat. I'm looking on page... Okay, page 14 is the close assault. Occupying the same hex as an enemy unit, make close combat attack. It may only attack other units in that close combat hex. You can't fire outside the hex. If there are stacked enemy units in the close combat hex, it does not attack each of them, but you pick one. And you get a +4 attack bonus for the attacker. The defender uses their flank defense. All units get except vehicles, gain the terrain defense roll modifier. Crew serve weapons. White. They do not gain the +4 bonus in close combat, and they suffer a -2 penalty. Oh, I guess they could initiate the attack if they wanted, but they just really suck at it. Moving into an enemy hex to initiate close combat requires a move action. So the attacker will have to wait a turn before it is able to attack. This means their opponent will have the first chance to attack or withdraw if they have the resource to do so. If a player decides it would be better to withdraw from close combat rather than attack, the following restrictions apply. Basically, you got to move away from the opponent, but you can't move into the spots. Like the German player was here, so like I can't move forward to where the German player was. I have to like move away from where the German player came in from. Alright, so here's an example. Assume all units pass their spent check. So it says the Soviet rifles move into a building, +1 terrain modifier, to initiate close combat with a spent German MG-34. The MG-34 is spent, and the Germans do not have enough caps to lower its attack cost to 0, so it cannot fire. Alright, so it is, you do spend the cost of the attack. It's an attack. I was just seeing, exactly what that would cost. But here's the thing. Because neither of us have a lot of cap points left, we don't have enough to pay for the cost of attacking. So I've moved German units in there. They'd have to wait until the next round before they'd have enough, they would be fresh and could attack or have cap points to spend. However, here's the thing. The Soviet player is like, I don't want to lose that Maxim machine gun. We're going to move. We might not be able to move. We can move out into an open hex, and that might be just as bad because it costs 2 for a Maxim machine gun unit to move, and to move into a building would cost an additional move point. They only have 2 cap points left. So we could move out, but we would have to move into the open, and then the German player would get a nice fat bonus for shooting a target that's adjacent and in the open. They might be safer just to try and wither a close assault. So the Soviet player is going to move this. No, they're going to move this fresh unit into this building. One, because they can eventually maybe move up and reinforce. Haha. All right. So it's 1 AP to move, +1 for being stressed, so we got to roll 3 or higher to stay. Yep, good. Look at that. 7 is the best. So they're good, and they stay stressed. Then we flip back to the German player. The German player does not have enough cap points to do anything that I can think of except move. Like I could move this German unit somewhere else and say, yeah, well, we'll bypass that loser and move into this building and position ourselves to rush in and take the orders. And that's what we're going to do. We ain't got time to do close assaults. We're going to bypass you. So we're going to spend one. It costs 1 AP for normal for movement, 1 to move into a building. So I spend 1, 2. That leaves me with 1 AP. They're already spent. And they're stressed already. Then we go back to the Soviet player. And the Soviet player says, What are you doing? Okay, well, we can't have you do that. So we're going to move in where you are. So they go, ha, take that, guy. And they move. And it's 1, and they're stressed, so they got to roll 3 or higher to stay fresh. 3 or higher to stay fresh. So the Soviet player says, yeah, take that. Then the German player says, yeah, I'm done. I pass. I got nothing. I tried to outmaneuver you. I'm done. Then he goes back to the Soviet player, and they say, you know what? I'm a fresh unit. I can initiate that close assault that you were so anxious to get into. And that's what I'm going to do. So he's going to initiate his close assault. He gets they're in a building, so that's 1 extra defense bonus for the German player. The German player, because of their flank value is 11, they're at a 12 total defense. The Soviet player has an attack value, I'm looking for his attack value, 4. And because it's the attacker gets a +4, they're at a total of 8. And that means 12 minus 8 is 4. Holy cow. I got to roll 4 or higher to hurt that German unit. This was probably bad play on my part. Oh, we rolled a 4. We rolled exactly what we needed. I didn't have to spend any cap points for that. So we're going to draw. Now, if I had rolled 4 higher than that target number, so if I had rolled an 8 or more on the dice, I would have eliminated that German unit outright. So here we go. I just drew. What do we got? Bam! They are suppressed in a very bad way. Alright, so we're going to put that here under the German player. Now we're going to check if the Soviet player gets spent. So it costs 4 action points to attack, plus 1 because they're stressed. So I need a 6 or higher to stay fresh. Nope. They are now spent and stressed. Then we go back. Oh, I had to pass with the German player, right? Because I had nothing to do. So because we passed that last time, we did lose that stress because they rested. They caught their breath. So it was the German player. German player, pass. And it goes back to the Soviet player. We got fresh units. So I could start to converge these units towards here to set up a nice defense. The German player, it's not looking good for the German player. So we're going to move... I think the machine gun is going to stay put. Right? You know, I know that a reinforcement is going to come from this way. This building blocks a lot of that line of sight. So they're actually going to move. So they're going to go 2 movement points. Boop. Because that's in their front arc. They're going to move up to this building. So what they're going to do here is they're actually going to move up here 1. They're going to move there. Because there's nothing there right now. So 2 movement points. So I got to roll a 3 or higher not to be spent. I rolled a 5. But the stress moves to them. Because that rifle unit had a chance to catch their breath, and now they're stressed. Not spent. Then we go back to the German player. German player says, 9. Then it comes back to the Soviet player, and he says, you know what? We're going to, I think I bumped him. We're going to move up as well. Reinforce this area. So he moves here. You can't pivot before you move. You have to move and then pivot. So this is in their front arc, so they're going to move here. And then they're going to pivot there. And now they're going to roll a 1. Well, they have to roll a 2 or higher because it's 1 movement point. Boo, barely made it. So they're stressed, not spent. Shaken, not stirred. Then it goes back to the German player. German player says, then back to the Soviet player who says, I'm going to now finally move in here. That's 3 action points to move into that wood building. So I have to roll 4 or higher not to be spent. Bam! Look at that. Soviet player's got moves for days. Back to the German player. And he said, no, I'm good, pass. Back to the Soviet player. So much action going on. He's going to move up here. We are now going to defend that stone building. It's a 1 movement point. 2 for moving into a stone building. Nope, just 1, sorry. So I got to roll 3 or higher not to be spent. I roll a 3 or higher. They're not spent, but they are stressed. Back to the German player. German player says, no, I'm good, thanks. And then back to the Soviet player. Bum, 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 bum. And they're going to move into that stone building. That way they've got super good protection and a nice, pretty open field of fire. That's 2 movement points plus 1 for moving into a stone building. They have to roll a 4 or higher because it's harder to move that machine gun around. They rolled a 4 or higher. Oh my goodness. So the stress moves from the other guy back here because they took a moment to rest. Goes to the German player. German player says, no, I'm good, thanks. Then the Soviet player says, boy, I don't know. He could move another unit in here and attack that German squad. Yep, go big or go home. Now, they're moving backwards, so that's an extra AP cost, but they're going to move in to this hex because you can stack unlimited, the book said. So that's 2 APs plus 1 because they're in that wood building, right? So that's 3. So they got to roll a 4 or higher not to be spent. Oh, but they're spent. The hope was they would move in, not be spent, and I got to retain the facing that they were, and I think they were facing that way. So the hope was they could move in, not be spent, and then, you know, do an attack. But they get the stress. German player says, no, I'm good, thanks. Because he just doesn't have the cap. And the Soviet player says, you know what? I think we're good. That's 2 passes in a row. Look at there. That's a lot of action that can happen in one round sequence of stuff. So I'm going to advance the time track. Because I zoomed in, you probably can't see this all very well. But boom. We're now ready for mission round 2. You know what? I think we're going to pause there. We're going to upload that. And we'll come back later and do, you know, kind of break this down. Otherwise, this might end up being like 5 hours because I'm, you know, chatting and then kind of figuring out what I want to do. So we're going to stop there. That's round 1. I'm going to advance the timer so I know when we come back we'll be at the start of round 2. Awesome. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Probably maybe tomorrow. So if I do these back to back, you'll get one episode a day of Conflict of Heroes, Storms of Steel 3rd edition. Yeah, so far, as the gameplay comes back, and then hopefully I'm doing that spent right. Plus, this will give me some time if people comment and say, no, this is how it's supposed to be done, dummy. Then, cool, I can make sure I'm correct for the next time. But right now, this kind of feels like how it's supposed to be. So that's the hope. Fingers crossed we've got it right. Yeah, this is good. So I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you for tuning in.